Enter the stars. Good morning, everybody. And as we know, mountains are portals. When Moses went to the top of the mountain, that is where he received the Ten Commandments. And there are many, many other precedents in the Bible that prove that mountains are portals. And here we have an update to these strange monuments popping up all over the world. Now this one is personal because this particular monument, this new one, popped up in Atascadero, California, exactly 13 miles from the college that I went to. Now I'm going to show you this on the map. I'm going to play a little bit of this, but this again sits at the top of a mountain. Again, what you're looking at is the marker to the side of that. Many of these hills and mountains, especially in California, they have these markers, and I believe that that's what that is at the foot of this particular monument. But this is starting to get creepy. Now let's go into Google Earth and I'll show you what's going on here. There is, all I did was punch in Pine Mountain at Atascadero. I drew a line from the marker, which is where you just saw that monument, to the P on the side of the mountain. This is a landmark. And it stands for Poly. It's a short hike from the college. And I just drew the line. And there, for those of you that are on like a tablet or a laptop, you can zoom this in and see that it's exactly 13 miles. Here's Cal Poly campus. Here's the P on the side of the mountain, short hike from the parking lot of the campus. And now let's zoom this out and go 13 miles away as the bird flies over Cal Poly grade, or the grade they call it, to the monument. You can't make this up. So this has become very personal for me. Now I graduated in 1996. Let's move that cursor there. That's not exactly on there. Okay, it's 13.03 miles. But this is likely where that marker is, because this was the coordinate. That could be higher up this mountain. Could be up here, I guess. But 13 miles nonetheless. This is the peak. Maybe this is the peak. Yeah, this might be it. 13 and some change. Or this might be it here. This looks more like the candidate here. Yeah, like right here, probably. Large, bald area, as we see in the video. Let's go back here and just look. Yes, this large, balded out area, or I guess barren area you could call it. Let's go back to Google Earth. That's probably it. It could be this peak as well. But this is Pine Mountain. Now, I don't know a lot about Pine Mountain. I didn't frequent this area very often. But there's something going on here, obviously. You know, every day we wage battle on the enemy. And make no mistake, he will try to intimidate all of us. Many of you would agree that this channel has come under heavy assault over the years from other channels, from naysayers. No matter how many times we keep showing you things that the Holy Spirit has given to us as gifts, no matter how often we all work together as subscribers, you and me together, to bring this information, it seems like someone always has something to say about this channel. So this is probably another attempt at discrediting, you know, whatever it is that the enemy is going to try to use. Looks like the peak is probably here. This looks like a little bit taller there. So 13 miles. So I wanted to open the show with that. Let's close this up. And this new monument that appeared. Now, this was Russia Television. They uploaded this. Looks like December 2nd, so that was yesterday. So this must have appeared yesterday. These, I believe, are countdowns. These are the fangs of the snake. Countdown to what's coming most likely on December 14th, which would be the mass distribution of the vaccines all around the world. And it seems that it's all going to be coordinated to deliver on the date of the eclipse, December 14th. We can call that V-Day from now on. But this is what's going on. Let's play a little bit more of this. That's probably the smaller area. Yeah, this is probably the very peak. So 13.06 or 8 miles. And there it is. So you have to wonder. Now we have ourselves some kind of phenomenon. And what they're trying to do is, they're being coy now. They know exactly what they're doing. They probably had all these things set up in place already. And there will probably be more. And so it's up to you guys to document these, and let's start counting them. And I'll be pinpointing them in Google Earth, putting a push pin, and maybe they will form some kind of pattern over the surface of the Earth, right? So, yeah, Marcy's like, you put them there? Yeah, that's what I know, right? Now, I also wanted to recap, and we'll get into Alice in Wonderland syndrome in a bit, but the people that removed the Utah monument called it litter. And they were supposedly environmentalists. Well, there's deeper, significant meanings and spiritual meanings to them calling this litter. Now, they might not know what they're saying, but this is called spiritual manifestation. There is a litter snake. Now, this is a non-poisonous snake, but there is a litter snake. So, weird, right? So, let's get into today's show. Alice in Wonderland syndrome. I saw giants when I was 12. Now, I've done this show before, but we're going to do it now with no interruptions, no sound problems, and with all of the other knowledge that we've learned over the last several years. And this is one of my favorite shows to do because this information is amazing. It's faith building. It shows you how the body code works, how God works, how all the glory goes to him, how he proves that he is the creator of the universe. Now, at the time that I experienced this, little was known about Alice in Wonderland syndrome. This is otherwise known as a condition called macropsia, or it can be called micropsia, M-A or M-I, depending on whether or not the hallucination that you experience makes you feel like a giant or it makes you feel very small. Here it is right here. This was back in 1985. I was about 12 years old. And I was passing into puberty, of course, and I experienced this strange phenomenon for about 5 years of my life, frequently, and then every so often after that into my early adulthood, it would come back. But what I learned was not to be alarmed, and that the episode, what happened, and that I would be okay, because nothing really bad happened. It was just this weird phenomenon. I would sometimes experience like a buzzing in my head, almost like I had crossed over into some kind of other dimension, and sometimes ringing in the ears and a metallic taste in my mouth. So these episodes would happen just as I was falling asleep. And as we know, when we fall asleep, the melatonin begins to flood your body. That's what actually causes you to sleep. And that's all triggered by the lack of light. So as you turn the lights out, your brain receives a signal because of the amount of light coming in through your eyes. So as it begins to dim, the melatonin is released. And at that point, the melatonin causes you to become sleepy, and this is how you fall asleep. And this is why I tell people, do not try to fall asleep with lights on. You need complete darkness to trigger the melatonin. Otherwise, you're not going to get your REM sleep. You're not going to get your restful sleep. In order to experience full natural biorhythm of the way God intended your body to work, you have to follow the rules, right? So you've got to get your sleep. You've got to have the lights off. And so as this melatonin was flooding my nervous system, the time between being awake and falling asleep, I would open my eyes, and just by the light of the hallway, I could see, like, for instance, the light switch on the wall or a picture on the wall. And I would look across the room, and basically everything would become very, very large. And I would become very, very small. And when I would go to reach across the room, something that normally I could touch felt like it was really, really far away. It was basically a type of depth perception anomaly. So it was really weird, and we didn't know what it was. And it's like that old camera trick that they do in Hollywood where they zoom the lens in while pulling the camera back. And this became very popular in Hollywood over the years in certain scenes. We did a video on that once, and we exposed something. Oh, that's right. There was milk and honey on the table in one of these famous camera zooms. And I forget what the name of that camera. Let's look it up real quick because I just want to do this. Move camera back, zoom lens in camera trick. A lot of times we'll do live decodes like this so that you guys can learn how to research. This is how I research. You guys, everything is how you punch in the numbers and how you punch in the letters and words and verbs and nouns. Once you learn how to do that, any of you can become researchers. So there I found it. It's called the dolly zoom. And look at this. This is the dolly zoom. So they move the camera in. Here's an actual, let's play this. I want you to get an idea of what it felt like to have Alice in Wonderland syndrome. So there's a lot of that going on, as you can see here. Now, there's a famous camera zoom that I had actually exposed in a film. I can't remember the name of the film, but they're sitting in a diner, and on the table is milk and honey. And you're going to understand the significance of milk and honey as it relates to the Alice in Wonderland effect, and just as we get into this show. And this is nuts. So that's what it feels like. Now, I remember my mother taking me to the doctor at least once about this, and they had absolutely no idea what I was talking about. They had no clue. They thought it was some kind of hallucination, but they didn't know what it was. Now, when my son turned 12, this is when I realized that this had to be hereditary, because he would say to me, "Dad, my eyes are stuck like that. My eyes are stuck. They're stuck, Dad. I can't fix my eyes." He would say that to me when he was 12 years old. And that's when I knew this had to be a bloodline issue. This is a hereditary thing. Now, they've updated this Wikipedia page. It didn't used to say anything about heredity, but now all of a sudden it does. They try to blame it on migraines, brain tumor, psychoactive drug use. None of this applied to me when I was 12. I didn't do any drugs or anything. I don't think I was even drinking at that time. They also say it could be initial symptom of the Epstein-Barr virus caused by abnormal amounts of electrical activity, resulting in abnormal blood flow in parts of the brain that process visual perception and texture. Now, that could have something to do with it, but what is the cause of that abnormal brain activity? Is this have something to do with the bloodlines? And I don't even know what that means, but there's something to it. So, this distortion in your visual perception is something that some people experience. Now, several of you are probably in the chat chiming in as we speak with your own personal experience with this. And that's great. Share that information. We need to know what's going on with this, because if we can share stories and anomalies, maybe even by race, maybe you can say what race you are or whatever, this might give us clues as to what this is all about. So there's much more to this, because I found this biblical passage that seems to describe this phenomenon. So we're going to get into Numbers chapter 13. And then after that, we're going to get into the Wikipedia article, read a little bit more about all of this. But Numbers 13, of course, is the biblical passage about the 12 scouts going into the land of Canaan. Now, I told you I experienced this when I was 12, and so did my son. That's weird. Why 12? Wasn't Jesus 12 when he fascinated the doctors in the temple? And they saw these giants in their eyes and each other's eyes, according to the passage. So let's make this a little bit bigger. Now, before we get into this passage and the symbolism here, I want to be very clear. All of this really happened. But here's how God works. When you're in his will, when you're doing as he's telling you to do, you're also acting out his body code. In other words, the entire history of the world is encoded into your flesh suit. Why? Because God knew the beginning from the end. He is the Alpha and the Omega. So our bodies are maps. They're maps of the entire history of the world. Why do you think Daniel is all about a statue of a man? Because that's a clue that, in fact, our bodies do encode the history of the world. It's called the body code, and we've shown you many, many, many metaphors that we found in the human body, the physiology, the anatomy, that seem to be maps of different biblical passages that all really happened. This is how God confirms his glory and proves that he is the Most High and the creator of the universe. If only we look within, the kingdom of heaven is within, is what Jesus says. I think this is what he meant. Now, let's read through some of this passage here. I'm going to make sure we're connected, and we'll keep going with this. Appreciate everyone that made it out to the show this morning. I know I started a little bit early, but this is a very, very important show. All right. Looks like the sound is good. All right, here we go. The Lord spoke to Moses. Now, you got to remember, these are the Israelites, the real Israelites in the wilderness after the Exodus, and they were promised the land of Canaan. And they went out to, Moses sent out these scouts into the wilderness. He sent out one scout from each tribe. There were 12 tribes of Israel. Here are the tribes here. And then they went out to spy out the land. And when they came back, they said this. Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan and said unto them, Get you up this way southward and go up into the mountain and see the land, what it is, and the people that dwell there, whether they're strong or weak, few or many, and what the land is that they dwell in, whether it be good or bad, or what cities be that they dwell in, whether in tents or strongholds, and what the land is. So Moses is giving him instructions of what to look for, whether it be fat or lean, or whether there be wood there or not. And be of good courage, and bring of the fruit of the land. Now, the time was the time of the first ripe grapes. So they went up and searched the land from the wilderness of Zin unto Rehob, and they ascended into the south. Okay, and they found the children of Anak, and they came into the brook of Eshcol, and cut down from thence a branch with one cluster of grapes, and they bare it between two upon a staff, and they brought of the pomegranates and figs. Now here is where the plot thickens, because when they took this branch with one cluster of grapes, figs, and pomegranates and held it on a staff, let's do this, grapes, figs, pomegranates on staff. There's the iconic images of the 12 scouts carrying Israel scouts carrying these grapes, figs, and pomegranates on a pole. If I could find it. I've got to put in the Bible. There it is. Here's an image of it. I don't want to belabor this point, but I want you to get a visual of this. So, here are the scouts. They came back with grapes, figs, and pomegranates on a pole. This was my first clue that there is much more to this biblical passage than meets the eye. This is, I believe, the visual representation of the pole. It's the hyaloid canal of the inner eyeball, and it is surrounded by what appears to be grapes, figs, and pomegranates. What are you talking about, Casey? There's no fruit in your eye? Well, there is. Here they are right here. Here's your pomegranates, which is called the ganglion cells. They look like pomegranates. There are exactly 3 structures in your eye, just like the grapes, figs, and pomegranates. They're lining the entire inner surface of your eye around the pole of Eshol. The pole of Eshol is the narrow gate. Here are the bipolar cells here in the middle. Those look like the figs, and the rods and cones look like the grapes. There it is right there. When you compare the structures, they look very similar. Now, this is fascinating, because what does the inner eye have to do with fruit? Well, the eye is also a metaphor for the womb, is it not? You have the opening and closing iris, which is like the cervix. You have God calling his offspring the fruit of the womb, mentioned over and over again in the Bible. You have water-filled cavity, just like the amniotic fluid of the woman's womb. You also have the umbilical cord, which appears to be like this hyaloid canal, feeding nutrients to the lens. Everything is upside down, just like a child sits in the womb upside down before birth and is surrounded by the fruit of the womb, the retina, which acts as the placenta, life-giving nutrients as they're fasting in the womb. The eye is a metaphor for the womb. It's a portal. And when Eve's eyes were opened, what happened? She went through a portal, didn't she? Into a different dimension, into the trees of good and evil. And when you're born, you come in through a portal. You enter the matrix, which is also mentioned in the Bible, by the way. The womb is the matrix. Now we'll get into this grasshopper in a second, because that's intriguing. But, so now you're seeing the metaphors here of the fruit being carried on the pole. Now let's keep going with this passage, because there's much, much more. They returned from searching of the land after 40 days. How many weeks is a child in the womb? 40 weeks. And at this point of the revelation that God revealed to me, I was just almost in tears. Chills. 40 weeks, the child is in the womb, and 40 days, they were in the land of Canaan. Now, don't get it twisted, because you have 2 eyes. There's an eye of good and an eye of evil. The 12 scouts were the eye of good. The Canaanite land that they went into is the eye of evil. Now let's keep going with this, because there's more. And they went and came to Moses and Aaron, and to the congregation of the children of Israel, into the wilderness of Paran to Kadesh, and brought back word unto them and unto all the congregation, and they showed them the fruit of the land. And they told them and said, we came into the land that flows with milk and honey. Well, what is the milk and honey? That would be the serotonin and the melatonin. Remember, I told you I experienced this Alice in Wonderland syndrome right as I began to fall asleep. The time between wakefulness and sleepiness, when the melatonin was released in the brain, that would be the honey, it's the brown substance. The serotonin begins to taper off, that would be the milky substance, the white substance, and you're in between phases. The land of milk and honey is also a metaphor for the circadian rhythm. Wow. Now, what else do we have here? The visual eyes, your regular eyes, regulate the light of the circadian rhythm. As I explained earlier in the show, when the lights go dim, the melatonin is released. And it is released by what's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And it causes your pineal gland to release melatonin. Now, as they go on here, they say, nevertheless, the people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south. The Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea. All of these peoples are giants. We track these bloodlines. They all came out of the line of Ham at the end of the flood. But then the scouts go on and they're like, we can't take this land. The people are like giants. They are stronger than we. And they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up inhabitants thereof. And all of the people that we saw in it were men of great stature. And there we saw giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. So that not only did they see them as giants, they saw each other as grasshoppers. Do you see this here? This is very important. In our own sight as grasshoppers. So to each other, they look like grasshoppers. They spiritually were experiencing an Alice in Wonderland episode, although these were real giants. You see how this works? God was trying to tell us something. Now, how do the grasshoppers fit into this? Well, you just saw that they mentioned grasshoppers. And grasshoppers are a pretty bizarre creature because they have what's called a third eye. It is called the ocelli. Here's some images of it. It sits right in the middle of their face in the pineal position. Scientists don't really know what it measures, but it's called an ocelli. It's a third eye. They actually have a couple above their eyes as well. They're not sure if it measures sound or it helps them to swarm. They don't know what this really means, but this is what it is. It's like a third eye. And it's interesting that this is the description that the scouts give the story. Now, there aren't too many creatures with this that they could have used as their example. Here it is here, the median ocellus, sitting right in the pineal position. Here's a zoom in of it, an actual one. I mean, this is weird. So now we have all of the components of the circadian rhythm embedded into this biblical passage. We have the light entering the eyes. We have the circadian rhythm regulated by the pineal gland, releasing the melatonin, causing you to fall to sleep and see giants. We have the fruit on the pole of Eshol, signifying the eyeball, which is what lets the light in and out. It's all there. So, what is this really about? This is a warning about the two bloodlines. Now you know why God did not allow the Israelites to mix with the Canaanites. This wasn't some racial thing. This wasn't some supremacy thing. This was a bloodline thing. Jesus would be coming out of the Israelite bloodline, the tribe of Judah. God couldn't allow them to mix with them because they were of the cursed bloodline. They could still have salvation if they believed, but they didn't. And they were trying to annihilate They were trying to annihilate Christ's bloodline in some kind of Terminator scenario before Jesus could be born. And Yahweh protected the 12 tribes. I had a troll show up in the Facebook group saying that Yahweh was the devil. Sorry, that's not true. And all those channels that keep trying to push that doctrine need to be called out at this point. I'm not going to name any names. But if you are trying to accuse the one Most High God who defended the Israelites against the Canaanites who were trying to wipe out the tribe of Judah, the bloodline of Christ to come, you are preaching an antichrist doctrine. And you are confusing the body of Christ because they are throwing out the Old Testament or believing that Yahweh was the devil, and it's simply not the case. And I rebuke that. So I don't allow those comments to permeate on my channel. You'll immediately deleted, and if you keep trying, you'll be blocked. Because this is very damaging to the body of Christ. Again, this is very important. I'm going to repeat myself. Yahweh was the God, the same God, who protected the Israelites. He waged battle for them and on their behalf to defend them against the Canaanite tribes, as we just read, so that Christ could be born, the Savior, pure of blood, and save the world. If you're saying that Yahweh is evil, you're preaching an antichrist doctrine. Plain and simple. Isn't God amazing when he reveals all these things to us? So there are your grapes, figs, and pomegranates. When we made this discovery and God revealed this to us, I was just beside myself. And I'm glad that I'm able to represent it to you guys today. Hopefully help build your faith even more. I love each and every one of you. Thanks, Allie, for joining the channel membership. I really appreciate it. So, do you guys have any questions about this? I know this is heavy information, but I wanted to present this to you guys today. Let's see here. Now, tomorrow we will be back on here with the God hour in your life, because for God, one day is 1,000 years for us. So you calculate the hour, 1 hour to God, it's 42 years. It's 41 and some change, but if you round it up, 41.6 something, 0.67, you get 42 years, which just so happens to be the exact angle that a rainbow can be viewed at. If you're standing at the wrong angle, you cannot see the rainbow. Well, we're going to go over the rainbow on tomorrow's show. I'm really excited about that. It's another classic that we've covered in the past, but now we've got more information. And again, hopefully this will help build your faith and understand that God is amazing and that a lot of this information has been hidden from us. It's been hidden from us. Now, before we go, I also want to explain to you how this passage really proves the Most High. Numbers 13. What's included in this passage is the physiological explanation of exactly how your circadian rhythm works. This book of Numbers was written thousands of years ago, before anybody knew how your circadian rhythm worked physiologically. The Egyptians didn't know it. Nobody knew it. So this proves that God knows exactly how your body works. And a lot of the passages in here, specifically related to the number 40, hint at how our body works. It proves that God is real. Who else knew this information? We just had to dig it out and look at it for what it is. So that's pretty much it, you guys. Let's see here. Let's go into the chat. Knowledge says, how do I send you material? CaseyBrown1973 @gmail.com. Thanks, Christy Bell. You've been with me for 4 years. You guys have all been part of this research, which is just humbles me, you know, because you guys are the ones that send me this information. You give me clues, and it's like God's whispering in your ear going, hey, send this, send that. And then we put it all together. We look at it all together as one. And that's how we understand what's really going on. We get down to the bottom of things. It's God releasing his knowledge and wisdom upon us. And that is just really cool. I think it's really great that all of us get to be included. I don't know everything, or we work together as the body of Christ, right? So, all right, Ange has to go. It's okay. The show's pretty much over. And so, do you think our blood types are significant in any way? That's a big question. You know, I know RH negative is brought up often on this channel. I tried to look into that, and to me, it's still a mystery as to what RH negative really means. It gets into biology, and that gets very deep. I don't want to misrepresent God or say something wrong, so I kind of stay away from what exactly RH negative means. I do know there are two bloodlines, but both bloodlines are, they do have the ability for salvation, but the Cain bloodline have tendencies of sin because of, their father. And by now, most people are mixed with everything. Everything's mixed around. Ever since the Israelites remained pure. After that, it was, a free-for-all. So I wouldn't get so consumed about what your bloodline is and what kind of blood you have. I would be consumed more with, okay, do I have sinful tendencies? And if I do, maybe I know why, but I'm saved through the blood of the Lamb, regardless of what my bloodline is. And also know that the people at the top, they are mixing and concentrating their blood because they know about the bloodlines. And so this is how they maintain their power, and their evil intensifies. Their whole body full of darkness, which is what Jesus says, right? So, yeah. Now, look, if you are under the deception of Yahweh being the devil, please, please pray to the Most High. Don't follow a person and little, cherry-picked verses that they pull out of the Old Testament to try to prove something. Listen, this whole, even this vegan thing, I'm taking more of a hardline stance on it. It's okay if you're a vegetarian or you can't eat meat. That's not the problem. The problem is when you try to guilt trip other people. And then what you're doing is you're putting God on trial. Because the God of the Old Testament, the Most High, he had sacrifice for sins. These are animals. And he did sacrifice his son. So once you start going down that road where you start saying how cruel it is to kill an animal, you're putting God on trial. Because he did it. And he gave his son. So again, that's an antichrist philosophy. Now, there's a verse in 1 Timothy that says that veganism is a doctrine of devils. The abstinence from meat is a doctrine of devils. And I didn't understand what that meant until I really started thinking about it. And I started thinking about how how the Most High required animal sacrifice in the Old Testament. And how if you were starting to shame people for eating meat, that you basically were putting God on trial, or trying to. You can't put God on trial. He created all of this. The reason why the animal has to be killed is not God's fault. It's because sin entered the world. Blame it on the devil. He's the one. And sin has to be atoned for. Otherwise, God's judgment comes immediately upon you. If you don't have a sacrifice, it comes immediately upon you. And then we're going to question that? We're going to question that? And then Jesus did away with all that. He came and he made it so we don't have to do that anymore. He became the sacrifice. So don't start questioning the Most High and his and like I said, if you're a vegetarian, that's fine. You can say that on the channel, but just don't start shaming people and saying, what kind of God would do that? Or how could you do that to another life? That's when it becomes a doctrine of devils. All right, because understandably, a lot of people can't eat meat. But we were given permission to eat meat after the flood. It's right there in the Bible in Genesis when Noah got off the ark. So, we've got to take a little bit of a harder line on that. I didn't quite understand all of the depths of it until God revealed it to me. He said, Casey, this is what is going on. I required sacrifice. We went over the temple a couple weeks ago, Solomon's temple and the tabernacle. And we showed you the sacrificial area, the altar. We showed you the water, the basin, the brazen basin, how the priests had to wash themselves. And we showed you how everything was copper outside, because that's the unclean, nakasheth, the serpent. And then once you are cleaned and you've given your sacrifice, then you can enter the Holy of Holies, which is all gold. Gold represents clean, copper unclean. Now, I've also got a montage that I put together about the copper, the portals, okay? And it was from the movie Tenet, and I just grabbed some screenshots, and we'll do a full decode on that later in the week or next week. But I wanted to put together a montage for you on Tenet, because it is about time travel and it is about copper. Copper objects such as bullets that go backwards in time. And when I was looking at that, let me see if I can pull up some images of copper magnets. Because when I was watching some of these shots from let's play this one, from the film, and how this bullet moved around, it triggered something in my mind, something that I had seen before, and that is how copper reacts to magnets. Now, these are special magnets, but there's something really weird about this. Copper acts very weird and different, almost as if it's slowed down in time. And you have to wonder, like, if any of you are into this, playing with copper and magnets, and you have a tiny, let's play this one. I'm just going to play a few seconds of this. If you have a tiny little, what do they call it? Atomic clock? Like a tiny one that measures time. It would be really interesting to do an experiment where you drop this magnetic, or this clock, this atomic clock, let's turn the sound on, right through this pipe and see if there's a difference in time. I'd be very interested to see, because the magnet slows down inside the copper pipe, and I'm wondering if time slows down. I don't anticipate that that's the case, but you never know. So this is the experiment. It's all over YouTube. Let's fast forward through it. You got a copper pipe. Well, actually, this is a lead pipe. Drops it, it goes straight through, right? Then he takes, I think there's the copper pipe. Look at that. That's crazy. You're wondering if time slows down. We've already identified that copper has something to do with time. Now, I don't know what that is. I'm not a physicist, but from all the evidence we've seen and all of the pre-programming that they put in the films, copper is definitely a part of time portals of some kind. Now, it could be the serpent in the chest. That would be copper, right? How they repossess clones, demon-possessed clones. That would be a form of time travel. Reanimating an ancient pharaoh from DNA and then possessing it. That demon would wake up as if they had traveled from 2000 BC to now, right? They've been around since the beginning of time. So that could be it. They're talking about the copper serpent in the chest, demon possession, or it could not be. I don't know. Or there could be another component to this. But this is all very interesting nonetheless. All right. What else do we have here? Go into the chat. Tenet can mean it pronounced backward. Yes, Kotz. It's the same word backward and forward. There are a lot of words that are like that. Anna, for instance, backwards and forwards, and a few other words. Those are, and you'll see those words pop up in like time travel films. All right. All right. Well, we're going to call it a show today. Be saved, everybody, and take care. Love each and every one of you.